This is Extra Paycheck Podcast, episode number 82.
You're listening to Extra Paycheck Podcast, where you will learn how to build and grow your own successful online business. Now, here's your host, Alex Soul.
Welcome to yet another episode of Extra Paycheck Podcast. This is episode number 82, and today's special guest is James Foster, who started his own business by launching a campaign on Kickstarter. And today he's sharing all the details and a lot of advice. So enjoy today's episode. Hi, James. Welcome to the Extra Paycheck Podcast.
Hiya.
Please tell us a little bit more about yourself and what is that you do as a business.
So I'm James Foster. I'm 27 years old. About a year ago, I started a business called Bryt. And Bryt makes incredibly colourful and quirky socks. And it was a little bit of a crazy story why it started. Not very many people decide out of the blue that they're going to start creating socks. But it was about 18 months, 24 months ago that I was trying to find, trying to listen into podcasts, reading books, trying to develop some sort of inner confidence, more confidence, be fuller in myself. And I came across a study by a guy called Dr. Galinsky that actually said wearing colourful socks made people happier. And it wasn't that I wanted to be more happy per se, but it just intrigued me. And there was a couple of other brands knocking about that I was aware of. And I thought, oh, this is really interesting. There's nobody else in that sphere. And we can add something to this product set that brings a USP. We can enhance the product even more. And so the idea of Bryt was born. We did our first Kickstarter campaign about 12 months ago to really trial the idea. And off the back of that, we went out into Manchester where we work and live. And we proved the study correct. And we found that people that wear Bryt socks get 427% more comments on how well they dress. And 98% of the people we found were happier and more confident as a result of wearing colourful socks. It was crazy. We couldn't believe what we were seeing when we saw the evidence. We carried on. We thought the proof's in the pudding and we better crack on and make colourful socks.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And I have some crazy socks at home. Some are like Christmas themed, but it's not regular Christmas themed. There's like drawings of snowmen and stuff on it. And when I wear them for Christmas and New Year's, right, everybody paid attention and noticed those socks. And it's also a funny conversation starter at times. And I have like some internet related socks actually with like all this like internet symbols on them. Unfortunately, I don't own your socks yet, at least. But I looked at them and they're incredibly bright and very beautiful. And I think everybody should wear socks like these, man. They're really amazing. And if somebody hasn't seen like super colorful socks or doesn't know what they look like, where could they see them? Where could they see your socks?
Well, we've got a limited range on our e-commerce site, which is brytclothes.com. However, our latest collection, we just launched the last Kickstarter campaign, which finished a few months ago, which we're about to start fulfilling any week now. And there's 32 designs on there. They're all crazy. So if you Google Bryt Socks 2.0, then you'll find them pretty easily. And they'll be going on the website pretty soon for people to buy. But yeah, I think it's a bit of a quirky thing to wear. And that's the niche that we hit on is there's a lot of people that just want something slightly subtle to make them stand out, that isn't in your face, but it's enough that people just, take a second look and maybe pass a comment like, "Oh my God, your socks are crazy," or, they're amazing. Where did you get them from? And it is a conversation starter. And it sounds mad that we're talking about socks can do that, but that's the reality. It actually works.
Yeah, that's true. And for those listening, by the way, the spelling is Bryt, correct?
Yes.
All right, and I'll be putting up links in the show notes of this episode anyway for those who want to just easily find them with a simple click. All right, James. So let's go back a little bit to when you got this idea of doing socks and stuff. How did you come up with a plan on how you're gonna produce them, where you're gonna make them? Because a lot of people would come up with some great ideas, like I'm gonna make my own tables because nobody makes this kind of table, but people wouldn't act up on that idea, on that business, because they don't know where to find the supplier who's gonna make those tables or whatever items for them, and people just forget about that idea and let it go. And that's, I think, most of the population. Yet you didn't just move your idea aside, you went ahead. But what were your thinking on all those subjects, like how to find a manufacturer and so on?
I wouldn't say that we're experts in any means, but we're certainly further down the line than many people starting out would be at this point. I think what I was keen on doing is just starting the project, just getting something going. So I reached out to a number of other sock brands and other companies and asked them, right, where do you get your socks made? We're interested in buying the socks. Acting like we were a retailer, because these guys don't necessarily want you to know where they have their products made. So we started to build a picture of where and how people get the product made, roughly the costs involved. And very early on, I live in Manchester, and it's a city that's steeped in industry. We're part of the Industrial Revolution, the northwest of the UK, and so I'm quite passionate about getting stuff made and designed in the UK. So that was one of the precursors that I had. So I had an easy task because I said, right, I'm only going to go to somebody in the UK. And from then I had a very finite number of people that I could approach. And I think a lot of people that start projects like this, they could get overwhelmed with looking at places in China and looking in places in India and Turkey and Italy and possibly the States if they're over there, or Canada. And I think one of the smartest things that we did was we gave ourselves some criteria before we started. And I said, we're not going to look at anything unless it's in the UK. So I think having some sort of criteria to build off is huge. If you're making tables, like you said, right, I only want to deal with somebody, for instance, in my time zone, because they're the easiest people to deal with, or I only want to deal with people that speak English, if that's the only language you speak, because it's easier to deal with them. We had we did go through a spell of contacting a few Chinese manufacturers right at the very beginning. And I said, do you know what? It isn't worth getting up at 2:30, 3 a.m. in the morning and trying to converse with the factory manager who speaks almost no English whatsoever. I know it's more than my Chinese, but since I'm the customer, they don't speak much English at all, and it's virtually impossible. So yeah, I think it's trial and error, reaching out to many, many people, seeing if if you want to make a particular kind of table or chair or whatever it happens to be, whether they can actually facilitate that method or that product within their factory. And I think it's simply a numbers game of setting some sort of criteria and then getting out there and actually one after the other making contact, following up, because it's at the end of the day it's your responsibility to make it happen. It's not theirs. Yes, you're the customer, but you want to make this come to fruition. So we were relatively ruthless when we went out and first contacted people. We were following up every single day, and quite quickly we got to a point where we had 3 or 4 various people to go with, and we made a decision.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And James, why Kickstarter? Why did you start your business by launching a campaign on Kickstarter and not any other way?
There's a number of reasons. One, there's an awful lot of people that use that platform on a daily basis. And two, it's a great way before you have any cash to invest in product to raise pre-orders for that capital to invest in manufacturing. They're the two reasons. I was questionable at the start because if you dig into Kickstarter, you realise that there's some specific niches in there that do extremely well. One, probably the biggest, is games. They do fantastic. And then you've got more tech-orientated products that do very, very well as well. And the more fashiony, crafty projects seem to not gain as much momentum, probably because the audience that's on there isn't quite the audience that there is for the games. So that put me off a little bit to start, but I thought, how else? There doesn't seem to be a platform like this elsewhere on the planet. There's a huge amount of success, and if we launch right, we will be able to validate the idea within 30 days, which was a no-brainer to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And James, is that your primary source of income at this point, or are you doing something else?
You mean as in a different product or through Kickstarter?
No, I mean the actual socks as a product. Is that like your main concentration and your main income as well, or are you busy with other projects, or do you work on different things that also earn you an income?
It's been my focus for some time now, but since 2 months ago we finished our last Kickstarter project, which did great, and it's propelled the brand Bryt really well. It's positioned us great with trade shows, with the press. It's positioned us fantastic with sourcing new distributors in various European countries and distributors within the UK. But since then, we launched in a very unconventional way. We didn't follow much of the guidance online because from our first campaign, we learned what works and what doesn't, and it's a crazy world, Kickstarter. But we did fantastic. We got one of the highest ever conversion rates seen by a Kickstarter project. Some of the marketers that I talked to that specialise in Kickstarter advertising and marketing confirmed that it was one of, if not the highest ever conversion rate for a launch day they'd ever seen. And since that, I've been approached by going back to some other income streams, a couple of quite a few projects that want to tap into that method of launching and building projects. So yeah, I offer consultancy services now to new Kickstarter campaigns that haven't launched. I think that's a really important point, that haven't launched. To set up their project well and to give it the possibility to generate six figures.
Mm-hmm. That's really awesome, and I think this is a great idea to help others achieve great results based on your experience and what you have learned.
I agree. For instance, the first campaign we launched, it's a completely stark difference, and I doubt there's another creator out there that's gone through such a variance in success. Our first campaign, we were 3 days into our campaign. We'd followed all the advice on the internet. We'd tried to get in all sorts of PR. We'd been successful with getting in various PR publications. We'd built email lists. We'd built a social following. We'd done everything. Or we'd done much of the stuff that the guidance online tells you to do, and we pulled the trigger, and we tried to execute as well as we could. And we didn't have a backer. We didn't know it was pushing the third day, and that is crazy. The amount of effort that we put in to not get anybody for the first couple of days was incredibly demoralizing. It was to a point where we said, should we just cancel it? It's, this just isn't going to work. There's no legs on it. And it wasn't until we started following our intuition on how we could actually raise funds on the platform until we started getting backers, and we ended up, 4 weeks later with about 800 backers. We raised in British sterling about £28,000, and at the end of it, there was only 30 people that we knew that had backed the project, and it's that trial and error, that first 3 or 4 days of actually working what works for 90% of the campaigns on Kickstarter. Not everything is a exploding kittens kind of idea that takes off instantly, and there's definitely some surefire ways that you can guarantee a very successful first day. And contrasting that to the second campaign, just to give you an inclination of what happened, I pressed the launch button on our campaign, and as soon as the page refreshed, we had 12 backers.
Wow. That's incredible.
It was crazy, and by the time the day finished, we had over 1,200 backers. We'd raised far more than our first project did in its entire 4.5 weeks. And we just absolutely killed it. And we're a project that's, all our socks are amazing, and make you confident and happier when you pull them on. At the end of the day, they're still socks, and people wear them every day. And to get that result for that kind of product, I think was really special. We went launching Pebble Watch, we went launching an Oculus Rift, where all those guys started on Kickstarter. We launched socks, and some of those techniques that we worked in before we launched that were completely against the advice that's out there on the internet was a massive success. And it's that I've been helping other people to launch with.
Yeah, that's incredible. And as you mentioned, people do wear socks and they love them. And I think because your first campaign was so great, it helped quite a bit for the second campaign.
Yeah, well, in my thought process, it wasn't that good. We had much higher expectations, but yeah, it was a success. We raised over our funding goal. We pulled the project off. We delivered and executed really well, so people were excited about the second installment, and I think that was a major factor to making the project a success as well. But having said that, there's some guys that we're working with that are similar kind of products to what we launched, not socks, but other kind of products, and they're proven to have really good results as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I monitor Kickstarter from time to time just out of curiosity, and sometimes I stumble upon products that I'm, it kind of goes both ways. Sometimes I'm super surprised at why they got so many backers, and sometimes it's quite the opposite. I find a product, I'm like, how come no one's backing it? It's an amazing idea.
I completely agree, and it's all in the setup. Everything is down to a setup. Somebody's good at launching a Kickstarter campaign. They could put a stick on there and raise $10,000. It's just it's the way that they advertise the stick that's important, and the benefits that the stick's going to bring people. But yeah, I completely agree. There's some projects on there that are great that don't do very well, and then there's some projects that you're thinking this is just ridiculous, and it does fantastic. I think sometimes the fact that it's a ridiculous concept, like there was a teddy a few weeks ago that absolutely killed it on Kickstarter. I've forgotten how many backers they got, but tens of thousands of backers. And it was a teddy bear. And I think sometimes ridiculous projects, once they get in the media, once they start spreading on social, they can actually be the ones that do great, but they're the hardest ones to engineer to do well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like one of the examples I could give you recently, there's a campaign that was launched about 3 days ago.
Yeah,
and it's for a turntable, right, to play vinyl records out of all things. And so this new turntable idea, when they launched it, somebody told me about it because like I'm into analog music. And I checked it out the first day or the second day, and they had no backers. It was, but I mean, they had like 10 backers. They gave them $3 for like a thank you note, whatever. And now, 3 days later, I looked at the campaign, and I think there were over $150,000 worth of backers in 3 days.
Wow, that's crazy.
Now, what happened in these 3 days, what I've noticed, once again, because I'm in that space of vinyl records and turntables and stuff, I noticed every single website that's that covers this kind of subjects, and many tech websites, they all picked up that story out of the blue. And because of them, that's what happened to their campaign so far. If nobody really paid attention to that, I think it wouldn't have gone as far as it did, as fast as it did. It was like, for them, it was honestly media, and it kind of became viral on itself because it's a amazing idea. I don't know if the actual product's gonna exist because, as far as I understand, they don't even have a prototype. But that's totally different story. But the fact that once again that once all the media started picking them up, and it's not even mainstream media, it's like somewhat niche websites, but with really passionate audiences behind them.
Yeah, media is an interesting thing. I think that the audience that is behind it is really critical. But before our first launch, we got in some quite niche media as well, and the conversions from it were very poor. That's not to say getting in the press isn't ideal. It definitely is ideal, but there's definitely some things that you can do to have a more consistent and safe approach to launching your campaign. What's the point in spending 150, 200, 300 hours on a project launch, and it's all skeptical whether or not you're going to get any publicity? Whereas some of the things that I do, I tried to focus on getting in front of Kickstarter backers, getting in front of the people that use the platform already. And the conversion rates with those guys are way, way higher because they know how the platform works. You're not selling them the Kickstarter ideology to begin with, and then selling your project second. What you're doing is you're just selling your project to them. And there's a number of ways. There's through social, there's through cross collaborations on Kickstarter before you launch. There's loads of different ways. And before we launched our second campaign on Kickstarter, I made the decision, right, the time that I've got, I'm going to at least hit this target of trying to get in front of this many backers before we launched. And on our launch day, we got in front of over 100,000 backers, and we didn't spend a penny.
Wow.
Yeah, it took a lot of work, but it's probably just the same amount of work that it would have taken to get in some sort of press. And that press may not have launched on our opening day. And the press that may have launched on our opening day may have converted quite poorly. And so what we did was we actually we got this virality going right from the beginning with a safer method of launching. And at that point, the press wanted to talk about us because it was a project that was noteworthy. Rather than writing about a project that's got 15 backers, the project had 1,200 backers, and I think that made a huge difference to how we were able to get in some of the publications.
Yeah, I'm sure that helps.
Yeah, I think there's two ways of looking at it. One, you can spend, let's say, for example, 100 hours trying to cultivate some press, and you may get in, you may not. If you do a good job, you may do. If you don't, you're probably not going to. And you can spend that same amount of time and get, I don't know, 200, 300 backers almost for certain, based off some pretty standard conversion rates on Kickstarter. And to me, it's a no-brainer. It might not be the sexiest option. It might not be the option that gets you in the limelight. It might not be the option that gets you thousands and thousands of backers in the first day or two, but getting in front of Kickstarter backers before you launch and concentrating your efforts on those guys is definitely a safer and more surefire way to actually hit your funding goal.
Mm-hmm. Great advice, James. And I'm hoping people who ever thought of launching something on Kickstarter are listening very carefully to this episode. Great advice. And James, so tell us a little bit more about the future of this brand. So you did a Kickstarter campaign, you did another one, but are you guys planning to concentrate on marketing the website itself so people buy directly from you and kind of like move away from the Kickstarter campaigns? What is the future for Bryt?
So it's probably a little bit unconventional compared to the guys that you've had on the podcast in the past. My background in law, it's not particularly... I know after I've said that, you're thinking, why is he making socks when he's got a background in law? Don't ask me, it's just happened, but it's going pretty well so far. But the future of Bryt... The future is bright.
Nice one.
We're not... E-commerce and online is definitely important to us, but with socks, it's not like we're selling a TV for $1,000. We're selling a pair of socks. It's $9.99 British pounds in the UK. They retail at, and whilst our profit margin is probably quite similar to another more extensive product, the monetary value of that margin is dramatically smaller. So when you compare that to the cost of advertising, yes, the cost of advertising a pair of socks is less than advertising a TV, but proportionally, it's not that much less. Yeah. So to drive sales, we're not in a point where we've got the experience or manpower to really drive online sales without using some form of advertising. And it makes it very difficult to sell socks online unless you're very experienced or have the capital to give to somebody that is more experienced. So the route that we're trying to take is we obviously need volume, we need lots of sales, because that monetary profit margin, the actual value of it is relatively small. So the more we make, the more money we can make, and the bigger we can build the brand. So what we're doing now is trying to secure various routes of distribution into Europe, and trying to build a more consistent cash flow in the UK. And by that, it means that we can get into many, many stores. So our future is definitely focused more on the wholesale route to market rather than online. It's not to say that we won't spend money and develop our online presence, because we've lacked in that in the last sort of 6 to 8 months. But our push is definitely going down the wholesale route to market and developing these distributors in various different countries, because we need the volume. We need the volume to pay for things online, and it just makes sense with the amount. There's only a few of us in the company so far, and the amount of man hours that we can put in, it makes way more sense to spend those man hours trying to develop lots and lots of volume rather than tweak our online presence to convert that little bit better. Once the cash starts coming in, I think it's very important to do that. I think it's extremely important in this day and age to have that polished online presence. But right now for us, with the amount of people and time that we've got on hand, we're using, the 80-20 principle. And we know that this amount of effort will yield the greatest reward for us. So that's the direction we're going in. And hopefully in the next 12 months, we'll have some pretty good distribution into Central Europe and maybe even into the States by then.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually, and thanks for sharing that. And a lot of people kind of miss out on that on retail. I had a product which I'm not really working with anymore. We still have it. It was basically a side project. My girlfriend and we started making our own beard oil.
All right, okay.
Selling it online, and it's also not expensive, relatively not expensive product, but we were selling it online only, and
Is that like I've seen Freakers. Is it something similar to that?
I'm not sure what that is.
Oh, it's another Kickstarter campaign.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's like I don't know what a beard oil is. It might be a Canadian or American terminology. Is it like a jumper for a beer bottle?
No, not beer, a beard.
Oh, a beard. Okay.
Yeah, beard
I get you.
oil. Yeah, so there you go. So we made that and we started selling it on Etsy, a little bit on Amazon here and there. But we made the most money having it sold through Urban Outfitters.
Yeah.
Which kind of happened as an accident in a way. We weren't going after it, but Urban Outfitters got in touch with us and they started ordering from us. And this is something that, when we started doing, we're like, we would have never thought that our little product would be sold in retail because...
It's crazy. We had a similar story because you think, how is our little brand? How is our little product that we sell? We don't sell, thousands and thousands of. How is that going to compete with these massive brands that sell into Urban Outfitters? And in the middle of our Kickstarter project, it was a very busy few weeks. We had a trade show down in London. We figured, right, well, we're pretty sure that the Kickstarter is going to bring in some more capital into the business. And we knew that wholesale was the way that we wanted to go. So we went to our first trade show and we were next to guys like Vans. We were next to people like Stance, all these massive fashion and clothing companies. And we were there thinking, oh my God, what are we doing next to all these guys? We've only got a few stockists of ourselves. These guys are in thousands of stores with massive distribution chains. What are we doing? And we were completely shocked by the reaction. The moment we told them our story of how we actually came up with the idea of the brand, how quirky it is, the fact that we were founded on Kickstarter by the demand of just the general population worldwide, people were like, oh my God, this is crazy, or we've not heard of Kickstarter. That sounds amazing. And our little stand was probably 2 or 3 times busier than anybody else's.
Wow.
Because there was that buzz about being fresh and new. And we also had, the guys there, they've got such big distribution chains and they're so ingrained into stores. I don't think that the sales reps put themselves out to attract new business. You know, they just schedule appointments, and when their appointment turns up, they have a conversation and wait for the next one. Whereas we had very, very few appointments. We had like one for the whole 3-day trade show. So I introduced a policy where we stopped every single person that walked past our little section, and it kind of snowballed. And by the end of the trade show, we had lots of stores that were walking straight to our stand and wanted to buy from us. So I think, being a little guy in a big pond full of big fish is sometimes quite a good thing. But before we went, we saw the list of the list of brands that were going to this trade show. And, you know, it's that The Art of War book talks about this concept called resistance, doesn't it? And they say quite often that the things that you have the most resistance about are the things that you should probably pursue the most. And that was so true. Before we went to the trade show, we were scared. We were saying to ourselves, do you know, it's a lot of money. We've spent a lot of money on this. It might not work. We'll have spent all this money for nothing. We might embarrass ourselves because we're so fresh and we don't have the networks that these people do. And at one point we were going, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And we said no. We made the decision. We knew it was the best thing to do. So we went, despite the fact that we were slightly nervous about the competition around us. And it proved to be, you know, as we thought, just the best thing that we could have spent our money on. And it's just kept the ball rolling after our last Kickstarter campaign, and kept the buzz going with the brand. But it proves that being a little fish in a big sea is sometimes a really good thing.
Yeah. And James, you know how they say that magic happens outside of your comfort zone, and I think you felt it on your own skin in this very story.
Definitely. You know, I said to my colleague that I went down to the trade show with before we went in on the first morning to the trade show, I said, you know what? If this doesn't work, we'll have had a fantastic experience, and we'll have pushed ourselves outside our comfort zone, because none of us had ever directly tried to sell to another store, let alone some of the biggest department stores in the country. And so, we were in a position where we didn't have a bridge to walk back across. We literally had to make it work there and then. And it's amazing what happens when you put yourself in that position.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for sharing the story, James. And as we're approaching the end of this episode, I wanted to ask you to share maybe one biggest and most important advice that you could give to people who want to try out Kickstarter, who want to launch their own product on Kickstarter. What is that most crucial advice that you could give them?
There's a couple. I'm going to give you a couple because I think it's so important. Before we launch, Kickstarter's got this whole background network industry of promoting campaigns. And many creators are very naive to that before they go into the project. So one of the major things that I would say is when you set your project up, don't make it the be all and end all to consider what you're selling your product for. Make it a more important priority to ensure that you have enough margin within your product that you can promote it. Once you've launched, once you've had a great opening couple of days, make sure that you've got enough margin within your product that you can pay highly skilled people to promote that campaign for you, because that's the difference between having a campaign that makes 40 or 50 grand and having a campaign that makes 500 or 600 grand. And so many people miss the boat on that. That's the biggest thing that I could say. And it sounds so simple, But so many people do not factor that in when they're creating the budgets to their campaign. Second takeaway is, with the time that you've got before you launch, you're probably very busy like we were. We worked full-time jobs. This was a side project. You've got a finite number of time. So make that time very effective. And the most important thing to do that is find ways to get in front of previous Kickstarter backers, whether it's via email, whether it's via working with other Kickstarter campaigns, whether it's via social media. It's your responsibility to find those routes in front of the eyes of past Kickstarter backers. Do you know, I would take any day a list of 2,000 or I would take any day getting in front of 2,000 previous Kickstarter backers, then getting in front of 40,000 random emails or maybe emails that are interested in fashion, for instance, with our case. I would take that specialized focus of people that are used to the Kickstarter platform and have backed a project before over any other media source, and that's what we focused in on, and that's how we got such good results on our opening day. So the two things there are: make sure you've got enough margin in your product, don't worry about price too much, and second of all, concentrate on getting in front on your opening day previous Kickstarter backers.
All right, great advice. Thank you for sharing, James.
No problem.
For people who want to find out more about you, about what you do, and maybe hire you as a consultant for their campaigns, where should they go?
Yeah, so you can check Bryt out at brytclothes.com, or for sure send me an email at james@brytclothes.com, and I'll be happy to provide you with some advice. You know, by no means I'm a tried and tested expert, but I think through such a dramatic difference in one campaign not doing so great and the other campaign, you know, absolutely killing it on the first opening day, I think I've got some really important insights. So yeah, I'll be happy to help people out.
Yeah, sure. All right, James, thank you so much for all your tips, your sharing your experiences, and thank you for being on the show.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Extra Paycheck Podcast. As usual, I will be putting up a show notes page at extrapodcast.com/82, where you will be able to find all the links and resources mentioned in today's episode. Also, head over to extrapodcast.com/iTunes in order to subscribe to the show, and please do leave a rating and a review, which will help the show tremendously. Once again, thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you next Monday.